we keep seeing the prices getting lower.
Yes.
My expectation as a user is that my electricity should go cheap.
There are thermal plants which are supplying power to the grid. Different discoms are paying anywhere between 8 rupee to 12 rupee per kilowatt hour for getting that thermal energy. Many solar developers and IPPs who earlier used to think that, oh, storage is a luxury and storage is making renewables uneconomical because it is increasing the cost, are realizing that no, this is not a luxury, but this is a lifesaver. We want to, as a country, head towards net zero by 2070, then at least the electricity sector has to become net zero by 2047.
And if storage is treated only as backup power, then
It's like an elephant and five blind men. You're only looking at the tail of the elephant and thinking it's a whole story.
India talks a lot about solar, batteries, and even electricity and energy storage. But to be very honest, it could be really confusing for a lot of us. Today, we want to give you that explanation. We want to make you understand how does this all work. Today, my guest on the show, or the visionary I should call, Dr. Rahul Walawalkar. He has spent decades into this industry. He's a known voice. He's a very respected voice, not just in India, but globally. Today, our conversation revolved around how India can do better in solar, in even battery storage. What can we do and how do we see India in 2047? I really enjoyed the conversation with me and Dr. Rahul Walawalkar. I hope you will also do. Enjoy the show. So, Dr. Rahul, if we have to talk about India's clean energy journey to a non-expert, tell us, how will you tell this story to?
So, particularly last decade, the clean energy journey has been amazing. If you think about even maybe 20 years back, there as an overall energy sector, the journey is amazing. Where 20 years back, we were thinking about India with lots of shortages on the supply side, on the generation side, which we fixed with lot of large thermal power projects. In last 10 years, we have also done amazingly well with grid connection for remote villages where there used to be almost 10% population not connected to grid. That was fixed in last 10 years. And in terms of particularly clean energy, back in 2013-14, we had a vision of getting to 20 gigawatt solar as a target. And whenever Planning Commission used to give a target, we used to joke in the industry that we'll achieve 50% of that. That used to be the standard expectation. But then suddenly, the Honorable Prime Minister upped the game and suddenly increased the target to 100 gigawatt. And considering COVID being there, we have almost achieved it on target. So we were maybe a couple of years behind the original target. That was primarily because of not scaling up of the distributed part of the renewables, where originally 60 gigawatt was meant for grid and 40 gigawatt was meant for distributed solar. So that got delayed. And then overall, wind has been actually there for last 20 plus years with companies like Suzlon, Gamesa, GE being there. Wind has been like a steady growth. Wind hasn't scaled to the extent of what solar has done, but still in last 2 years, we are seeing a good revival of wind projects as well. So overall, between wind and solar, we have been one of the brightest spot for clean energy around the globe, perhaps next only to China and US.
Wow. So if we talk about solar, we talk about wind, we talk about other clean energy sources. Is India really on the right path, or we are just putting all our efforts into different baskets, you can say, and trying to achieve something? What's the case?
Yeah. So the way I see it is, like, many times people ask about this in terms of, is there any silver bullet for clean energy or net zero transition, right? The way I see it is, we are not looking for a silver bullet, but we are looking for a complete range of arsenal. Because when you're fighting any war, it's not only army. You have army, navy, air force, and within that you have multiple tools which you use for fighting the war, right? So similarly, when we are looking at this sort of a net zero transition for our country, we need multiple technologies. And ultimately, India is a developing country and the cost is a key factor of it. So we need to make sure while we are adopting adopting these technologies, we are also doing it in a economically viable way, because entire country's economic growth is dependent on energy. And if you see from around the world, actually the energy utilization has perhaps the biggest correlation with economic prosperity. And right now we are at not even at a world average level. We are significantly below that, and we have a significant growth which is required to be done. For example, India had just crossed around 1,000 units per person as a annual energy consumption.
Okay.
Whereas if you see US is at almost around 17,000-18,000, which is perhaps too excessive. But if you see Europe is at almost around 10 to 12,000, and China itself is 5-6,000. So we have a long way to go. And when we are looking at this, we need to make sure that we are balancing between existing resources as well as the new technologies. And the other aspect is we need to also look at the manufacturing and other capabilities as well, right? Because there have been technologies which are like coal or hydro or gas, which has been around for decades, if not for centuries. And the grid operators, generation companies, they know how to build, how to finance those. So we also need to go through that transition. So that's where I think we are on a fairly a good trajectory in terms of the energy transition. And I don't like to start thinking about just 100% renewables or 100% solar. I think many times the journey towards that goal is more important than the end goal. And right now we have crossed 10% in terms of the energy utilization by renewable energy in the grid. In terms of the installed capacity, we have crossed 50%. But if you see in terms of actually the energy annual energy consumption from renewable sources, we are just around 15% right now. So we have a long way to go even to reach to 50%. And those first steps are very important. And that's where I think we have done amazingly well in last 10 years in terms of adding especially solar. And now with the attention on energy storage, I think we are on a track. But there are a lot of things which need to go right in next couple of years.
Sure. So you've talked about solar, you're talking about energy storage, but before moving into that, you specifically talked about a number which was 1,000 units per capita, if I'm correct, for India.
Yes.
And this is a electricity consumption, right? And we are talking about the US to 20,000, Europe to 12,000, and probably China to around
5-6,000. Yeah.
But how does this number actually matter? So basically, it can also happen that possibly the electricity people are using is lesser in India for people like us.
Yeah.
So that could also happen, and we are not overly using the electricity. Possibly what is happening in Europe. Possibly this is just, and you can answer that. Why is that number important to grow?
Yes. See, so my background is from energy efficiency and energy management side. So I would have loved to say that, oh no, India, we are doing so efficiently, the utilization that we are so low because of the efficiency. But unfortunately, that's not the case, right? We still have long way to go in terms of the energy efficiency and optimization side. So right now, it is just that the access of energy and the affordability of the energy is limiting its usage. So for example, right now, if you see the air conditioning as a load, right? If you see in India, it is perhaps one of the lowest in the world, and many countries have gone through this scenario. Like in US, if you see 70s, what was the situation? Perhaps in India, we are in that situation in terms of having accessibility to air conditioning. Now you can think about air conditioning is just for rich people or just for it's a energy wastage. But the kind of climate change we are witnessing, it is not necessarily just a luxury, right? Now we are getting in a situation where, particularly during peak summer times, I think maybe having some kind of a cooling is going to be actually necessity. We are seeing in Europe actually a lot of deaths during heat waves and other thing happening. And in India, perhaps we are not even counting many of those. So some of these things which are being considered as maybe unnecessary energy consumption will become part and parcel of life. That's where we need to make sure that we are making more energy available to people so that they can increase their quality of life or even productivity. Like for example, there are many things on heavy manufacturing. India has not done that well except for automotive sector or steel industry. India doesn't have as much manufacturing, and one of the key reason for that is the cost of energy for many of the manufacturing sector is substantially higher than in say China or other places. So we need to find that balance, and we see that with especially the Make in India kind of a focus from Indian government. I think there are as well as not just central government but many state governments. Earlier there used to be maybe Maharashtra and couple of other states used to be the focus for entire industrialization policy for country, but now we are seeing a very active competition with almost around 7-8 states. So not just Maharashtra but Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Gujarat are doing very well, but even other states like Orissa and others are also stepping their game in a big way. Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, all are vying for this. So I think there is a lot of potential for increasing energy consumption. While doing that, we need to make sure we are doing it in a efficient way from planning perspective on the load side. At the same time, if we can start cleaning up the supply side by making sure more renewables get added, then we should not be worrying too much about increasing the energy consumption as a negative in terms of the energy transition.
Okay, sure. So we will go into that renewable capacity, renewable things that we are using today. But before that, because a lot of our users wanted to understand that they have heard a lot about solar in India, and they have seen a big transition that has happened from possibly 2010 to in last 15 years. So what has really changed for India? And tell us the story of completely where we were in 2010, where we were in 2020, possibly in 2025, and what is the future that we are looking? What has transformed?
So in 2010, if I'm not wrong, we were less than maybe 10 megawatt of solar in India. I remember in 2009 when I first started thinking about returning back to India from US, and I was in India as part of a US India Business Council delegation, and there we had founder of Azure Power talking about his first 1 megawatt project in Punjab. So we have come a long way from there. We have just last year we have deployed almost around 38 gigawatt of solar just in 1 year. So overall, we have crossed more than 250 gigawatt of renewable addition into the grid. So we have come in a long way. And if you think about it in terms of the financial terms, I don't even remember what was a price for the first 1 megawatt project. But I remember when Gujarat came up with solar policy, the first PPAs they signed were somewhere around 15 rupees, 16
This is
rupees
which
per
year?
kilowatt hour. So these were maybe around 2011, 2012. And then things like the large solar parks and other concepts started to come in. And that's where suddenly things started changing. And if you think about that, that time a large solar park was seen as a 500 megawatt as a large solar park, with one company getting 25 megawatt or 50 megawatt solar park was seen big. Now we have individual companies announcing individual projects at 5-6 gigawatt kind of a scale. So it has been an amazing journey, and we have come down from that almost 15-16 rupee per kilowatt hour now to, in terms of just purely energy generation, somewhere between 2 rupee to 2 rupee 50 paise, depending on the location and the utilization of the solar.
And from, I think, 15 rupees to 2 rupees is what we have given.
Yes.
So a lot of people actually are wondering in specifically this case.
Yeah.
So we keep seeing the prices getting lower.
Yes.
My expectation as a user is that my electricity should go cheap.
Yes.
Right? Possibly in Delhi, we are paying somewhere around 3 rupees to 6 rupees based on the slabs.
Yeah.
But that hasn't gone down for any of the states, I would say.
Yes.
So why is that not working for us? As a user, that's my only question.
No, see, so one is, as I said, the renewable energy as part of the overall energy mix had just crossed 15%, right? So whatever you are getting now, cheap energy, is only for that 10% of your total energy procurement cost. So rest of it is still driven by the conventional energy. So you are not going to see suddenly, because you are getting 10% energy cheaper, you are not going to see all the other thing. The other aspect is renewable energy. The main challenge with renewable energy is it is variable, and also it is time limited. It is not available throughout the day. Like solar is available typically from 10 a.m. in the morning till 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon, and then beyond that, earlier or later in the day, there will will be some generation, but it is typically a bell curve. So what happens is you need to actually back down your conventional generation during the day if you have a lot of solar during the day, which is starting to happen right now. So traditionally what used to happen was when companies like NTPC used to build thermal power plants, they would build it under assumption of having 80-85% plant load factor. That is, if the plant has a 100 megawatt capacity and there are 8760 hours in a day, in a year,
87? Okay. Total hours.
8,760 hours in a year,
In a year.
then you basically, that's a total amount of energy which can be generated. So out of that, almost around 80-85% used to be assumed that the plant will deliver. So the entire financing of the plant would happen on that assumption in terms of fixed cost versus variable cost, which will be mainly driven by cost of the coal or natural gas, whatever fuel you are using in the plant. Now suddenly we are in a situation where many of these thermal plants are operating at 50-55% PLF. So although variable cost would go down, but as a total cost of fixed plus variable, it is going to go up. There are now, most of the times, no one talks about this when people are asking about, oh, when is solar or wind or batteries are going to get cheaper. Actually, there are thermal plants which are supplying power to the grid, which if you think about in terms of the total money paid to the plant divided by the number of units the plant has delivered, different discoms are paying anywhere between 8 rupee to 12 rupee per kilowatt hour for getting that thermal energy.
Is that because of that 85% say it has come down to 50%?
Yeah, because of the fixed cost, there is certain fixed cost. So typically the thermal sector has been used to having two-part tariff. So they get certain payments. So even if you generate a single unit, you'll have to pay fixed tariff. And same thing happens on the customer side also, right? As a consumer, if you notice your electricity bill, there is an energy charge. There will be some energy fuel adjustment charge, which is related to any assumption on your fuel cost increase. And then there will be also transmission distribution cost or demand charge, which will be a fixed charge. Even if you do not consume a single unit, you will have to pay at least 150 to 350 rupees, depending on which utility you are getting power from, which is called as wires charges. So those costs will be anyway fixed, right? So if you just consume one unit in a month, then you will consider that, oh, suddenly you are paying almost like around 200 rupees per unit for that one cost. If you are doing 10, it would go down to maybe 20 or 21 rupees. So that's the way it works. So this is a factor which needs to be considered. And that's one area where actually it is very important that as a country, we go beyond just looking at technology-based pricing or technology-based tariff for just each generation unit as a separate unit. But we need to start looking at it from the entire system level cost, where it is not only optimizing just generation cost, but we are also paying for transmission, distribution costs. Right now, these costs are not accounted for renewable because there is a ISTS or the interstate transmission cost is waived for many of the renewable projects. But ultimately, someone has to pay for it. If you consider transmission as a business, which Power Grid Corporation of India is the largest player in that, they have a guaranteed rate of return, which if I'm not wrong, is 16% on every investment they are making in transmission. So even if renewable projects are getting transmission for free, that doesn't mean that PGCL is not getting paid. PGCL is still getting paid. It's just that someone else is paying that. And who is that? That's a consumer. So ultimately, the consumers who are paying, not accounting for consumers who are getting freebies from the politicians, but any consumers who are paying, ultimately all that cost needs to be paid by them. And that's where we start seeing that for the paying customers, the costs are very high. In fact, you talked about relatively low prices, which is, I believe, is for the residential customers. There are many states where for commercial industrial customers, the cost is somewhere between 8 rupee to 12 rupee. In Maharashtra, as a residential customer, including fixed and variable tariff, we are paying almost around 13-14 rupees per kilowatt hour just for consuming even 350 units per month.
Wow.
So not with 2-3 ACs in a house or other thing, but as a normal household, even if you have like anything about 300 units per month, you are paying almost 12 to 14 rupees to the Maharashtra state, the distribution electric company.
So people who are not in Maharashtra, they should feel lucky. And possibly in Delhi, I think we pay around 4 to 6 rupees even with taxes per unit is what comes up to be. But yeah, possibly if you use more consumption, then you have more. So that's about solar that we actually talked about. where are we today and
Yeah.
why it's so important for India to just, or if you talk about solar, why it's so important for India, and where do you see India to progress in next 10 years,
Yeah.
specifically in solar?
Yeah. So now with solar, again, the good part is that India is blessed with a lot of good sunlight, right?
Yes.
We are in almost like sort of a tropical the weather conditions. Generally, except for monsoon months, we have usually like in a year almost 300 plus days of good sunlight. And now with solar technology improving, we can start generating even at a diffuse light. So even with cloudy conditions, you can start getting more solar energy. So from this perspective, I think again, it's a pun, but sky is the limit in terms of the solar. What is going to get limited is how we have the demand flexibility and how the grid planning happens. Because right now, in fact, if you see some of the states, particularly in Rajasthan, we are starting to see for new solar plants almost around 30, 40, or even 50% curtailment happening, which again, right now, not too many people are talking about it. Solar is a must run along with wind in terms of the grid code in India. But fact is that for whatever reason it is there, for technical reason or other reason, these curtailments have starting to happen. And you cannot blame the grid operators for that. These are just purely technical issues where they have to address, but we need to start factoring those. So
So
right,
you're saying we are not able to generate electricity from that? Is that the
so we are curtailing because the grid is not able to absorb all the solar which is getting added.
oh,
Just take example of Rajasthan, where we had actually in my previous role we had done a detailed study with WRI. Rajasthan again, if I remember the numbers correctly, has a peak load as a state of somewhere around 10 to 12 gigawatt.
okay?
In Rajasthan, this is I'm giving 3-year-old number. Now the numbers may be bigger. Rajasthan had more than 55 gigawatt of solar planned in Rajasthan.
Okay. So the peak
And
load is 12 while they
the
already
generation was planned was 55
5
gigawatt.
gigawatt.
And the majority of reason of that was ISTS waiver. So transmission is free. Transmission is responsibility for someone else to be provided. So no one is interested on actually looking at optimizing this from the system cost point of view. But ultimately, some of those transmission projects and other things have lagged behind. So we do not have those projects there. So now whatever solar has come up, ultimately they are getting curtailed. So now we see many solar developers and IPPs who earlier used to think that, oh, storage is a luxury and storage is making renewables uneconomical because it is increasing the cost, are realizing that no, this is not a luxury, but this is a lifesaver and you need to actually integrate. So people who have built actually solar parks are coming and now actually looking at how they can add storage into their existing park, because they have, even if many of these projects had plans of selling excess energy into grid, right, in the electricity market like
Yes.
Indian Energy Exchange, and they just assume that okay, average price is 3 rupee or something, or maybe it will go down to maybe 2 rupee. Right now there are days or hours when these prices are going down almost to zero.
Nobody's
I-
buying basically.
yeah, because there is
Nobody's interested.
excess generation, right? The market is purely driven by supply and demand. If
Yes.
there is too much supply beyond demand, then the prices will go down, and the marginal cost for solar generation is zero.
No, zero.
So these are the situations which are coming up right now, which are not completely unforeseen. Like we have been talking about it for last 10 years, that this was writing was on the wall, this was going to come. It is just that because of some of the delays in the policy making or some of the short-sighted nature of the investment which happened, where everyone is looking for just return on my current project instead of looking at okay, how much business I can grow.
Yes.
That's where we have missed out, maybe around like we are maybe 5 years behind where we should have been. But the good part is right now there is almost around 40 plus gigawatt hour of storage projects already. Tenders have been out, and hopefully in next 2 years many of these projects will get commissioned, so situation will start getting better.
And why did India actually lag? Where did India lag? And we are saying that solar might should have grown from X to whatever percentage.
Yeah.
But where did we actually lag? Was it the
Solar more or
technology?
less has grown, but because of that now suddenly we are realizing all these other problems at the grid side, on the reliability side, in terms of seeing these price differences in the exchange and other thing. But these are again all known situation. We were seeing these same patterns in some of the US markets like New York and Texas market way back in 2008 2010. So it was not something which was unforeseen or this was not projected. This was all known. It was just that people wanted to buy as much time to do business as usual till they can do. And that's why we are in this situation right now.
Okay. And you touched upon exactly that you have solar, then you need to have a energy storage, which
Yeah.
people laughed at in the initial part,
Yes.
that this is not something that it's a luxury that we must have. From that statement to 2025, what has that journey been? Where are we today in the energy storage, if we talk about? Is that really a luxury right now also, or it has transformed to necessity? And possibly, where are we going towards in next 5 years?
Yeah. So it's actually amazing for me to be in meetings now, wherein sometimes these are same people with whom I've had meeting and I have tried to argue in favor of storage, and now I go in a meeting and usually I'm actually the voice of caution sometimes, where it seems like everyone else is actually too convinced about storage and everything is moving fast. So now in fact I end up being in a room trying to actually talk about making sure that we are also not focusing on just like the L1 of storage, but we are looking at the safety of storage projects and other aspects. So I'm trying to actually make sure that because we have not done the right things in last 5 years, in terms of our execution capability, we are way behind.
But where
And
were we actually? If we again go back,
yes,
2010 make, where were we? 2020 again, where were we? Were there in
so
energy
nothing.
store
So again, if you see
2025.
2010, we were primarily using storage in terms of either pumped hydro. There was around 4-5 gigawatt of pumped hydro which was there, out of which only around 1.5 gigawatt pumped hydro was actually operating. And the
And for our
rest of the
user,
storage
I would
was
want to
lead acid
stop
battery.
you
Yes.
here. Actually, for our
Yeah.
user, let's make them understand what in some small definition
Sure.
what energy storage is today, or what how do you define an energy storage so that
Sure.
they understand, and then we talk about the 2010, 20 and 25.
Sure. So when we talk about energy storage, again, in the broadest term, even a oil storage or petrol storage can be considered as a energy storage. But when you talk about right now, especially in the electric grid term, we are talking about electricity energy storage.
Okay.
So traditionally, there used to be a saying that in electricity is different than other commodities because electricity cannot be stored in a cost effective way. So that is something which has started changing with evolution of many technologies. There have been storage technologies around for centuries, like especially pumped hydro,
Okay.
where you have water storage at two different levels. So you have a water reservoir up in the mountain, you have a water reservoir at the bottom of the mountain, and you use the elevation difference as a potential energy. So you pump pump water up the mountain to store the energy in form of potential energy, and you release that water, run the turbine as a generator, and then you end up generating electricity from it. So it has existed for more than 100 years. But there, the limitation is that you need to find the right geology to find that.
Yes.
What has changed, particularly in last 10 years, is, and again, lead acid batteries have existed for more than couple of 100 years, and we do use lead acid batteries for inverters, UPS, for cars, for starters. So these batteries have been there, and they are again a form of a electrochemical storage of energy. What has changed in recent years is the emergence of lithium-ion based batteries. Again, lithium-ion is a family of batteries. It is not a single type of battery. There are different batteries based on the type of electrodes which are used in the battery. The two prominent batteries are LFP, lithium iron phosphate, and lithium nickel manganese cobalt are the two chemistries which are being used. Of which for stationary or grid application, lithium iron phosphate is now gaining more dominance. So emergence of these technologies have now suddenly changed it, where you can now actually think about storing electricity anywhere. You think about your laptops, right?
Yes.
Earlier, when you had a computer, anytime you have a short power interruption, your computer will shut down. Whereas now you have your laptop, your
Laptops.
cell phones, you have a battery embedded with it. So almost with now lithium-ion batteries which are powering all these devices, now these have reached to a stage where you can actually start thinking about grid in a completely different way, where you don't have to instantaneously keep on worrying about meeting generation to instantaneous load, but you can use energy storage as a buffer in between, so that you can have this variability in energy generation, where solar is available only during day, water excess generation you can store, you can use it in the evening when there is a peak load happening, and that flexibility is now being provided by storage.
Okay. So for our users, when we say mobile, so we charge our phone, so
Yeah.
we use it for next 24 hours,
Yes.
10 hours. That's the energy storage that we are doing.
Exactly.
Similarly, for laptop, 4 hours of backup that you get.
Yes.
And energy storage, again, if we take it in a larger context, if we have to do this for a residential colony, basically a storage, which can give you electricity possibly for 3 hours, 4 hours.
Yes.
That's a simple definition
Yes.
of battery storage.
Yes, and many times we talk about storage. Similarly, we talked about the cost of solar. In terms of storage, also the capital cost has come down very drastically. Like when I started working on, when I was doing my PhD at Carnegie Mellon University, the lithium-ion batteries were costing almost $1,200 per kilowatt hour.
Huh.
Whereas at a cell level, now the price has come down almost to $35 per kilowatt hour.
Yes.
At a system level, we are still around $100 per kilowatt hour. But that's a kind of a reduction which is like a more than 10x reduction in the cost which has happened in just last 20 years. So that's something which is again changing. But apart from that, even in terms of the energy density, because ultimately the cost is not only the cost for the product, it is the system level cost you need to consider. The first project I was involved in US was with a company named Altair Nano. They were doing lithium titanate batteries, and the first project was done for an American company called AES, which was one of the utilities or IPPs in US. And that time a 20-foot container had a 250 kilowatt hour energy capacity. As a
20-foot container.
20-foot
Okay.
shipping container had a 250 kilowatt hour as an energy capacity.
Okay.
Can you guess how much energy you can get in right now?
Possibly 4 times, 5 times.
So it went from back in like say 2012 around 250 kilowatt hour to maybe 1 megawatt hour. By 2015 it started going to 2 megawatt hour.
Okay. 8 times
Now
already
the
happened. in
standard is
2015.
already 4 to 5 megawatt hour is standard, and we are actually getting companies talking about supplying next year 20-foot containers with 10 megawatt hour energy.
Wow. So this is like 40 times is
40
what we are
times
talking about.
energy density, and that actually reduces lot of other system level costs, because earlier you would have had to put 40 containers to get that energy.
You
Now
would
you
require
just
that
need
much
one container,
space.
so the
Yes.
space, land requirement, interconnection, all the ground repair, so everything cost gets reduced. And these are the type of innovations which is helping energy storage become a default for many of these grids around the world right now.
So which all applications are we currently using them?
So the biggest thing right now in India which is happening is for renewable shifting. So
Okay.
most of the tenders, like Solar Energy Corporation has been one of the leaders in this area. They are the ones who created all the buzz with solar by taking out some of the risk for individual solar project developers by providing financial or credit-worthy offtake agreements. So they are the ones who are leading this area right now.
Okay. Because I also see a lot of people that we also talk about, or a general janta, I would say,
Yeah.
right? People keep saying batteries exist everywhere. There are a lot of talks that's happening. But the deployment, when they actually want to tell the world, or has that been put up? Has that been many cases, or we are in process of getting these deployments done
So we are in
for energy
process
storage
of getting
specifically?
these deployments done. The problem was, according to just recently, I just Googled and I got some data which suggested that we have had tenders worth almost 80 gigawatt hour released between 2021 to 2025.
Okay, in last 5 years. Okay.
Last 5 years, out of which only around 40 gigawatt hour of projects have actually been awarded. And most of these projects are coupled with renewables.
Okay.
And most of the times the renewable projects need 12 or 18 months kind of a lead time for the land procurement and other things.
Sure.
So since the storage projects are integrated with that, we have not yet actually had many of these projects deployed. So far less than 1 gigawatt hour or maybe even around 500 megawatt hour is a deployment total in India in terms of the operational projects. But we are expecting that in next 12 months we'll have maybe around 20 to 30 gigawatt hour if all the projects get implemented. And that's where there is some uncertainty right now in the market, that are these all projects going to come up, because we have started with this reverse auction. The policymakers are now completely addicted to the reverse auction, where their view is that if there are commercially sound companies bidding for lower cost projects, why should we say no to it? But ultimately, the challenge is that many of these projects, if there is some uncertainty on the supply side, on the pricing, or something else happens, may get just scrapped because they could be financially unviable.
So it's
So
more on the quality that we want to push now.
we need to definitely focus, because now suddenly, like, we have started seeing the kind of pricing for storage projects is actually really it's hard to imagine how
So
people
what
are
are
going
those
to make any
prices?
money.
What are those prices that we are getting right
So we are now again looking at sub 3 rupee per kilowatt hour kind of a per unit of energy being transmitted from storage. People are bidding for that, whereas
Okay.
based on most of the same calculation, that needs to be at least 50% more. Now the challenge what is happening is people are assuming that taking certain trend, and these are mainly sort of management consultants or financial consultants who are advising many of the new entrants in the market, where they are just looking at a trend for last 3-4 years and taking the 10% year on year or 12% year on year reduction, and just assuming that okay, in 18 months they are going to get another 12% reduction,
now?
whereas practically it may happen the prices may go up 10%.
True.
So
It can, yeah.
without understanding that, it is going to be difficult, or people are looking for just looking for batteries which will, manufacturers are saying that they could give double the life, so they are assuming that on a per unit delivered from the battery over the life they can reduce the cost, without having any guarantee of those batteries performing in those real life operating conditions on ground. Because what challenge happens is that there is so much learning which you get by doing and operating assets. Unfortunately, in India we have lacked that. In India we do not have even two companies who have 100 megawatt hour operating experience of energy storage.
Wow.
In my previous company, we had got to almost around 3-4 gigawatt hour of operations of energy storage, but it took us almost around 12 to 13 years to get to that stage. Now we have multiple companies whose first project is at gigawatt hour scale,
Yes.
and they do not have people who actually understand how
Understand.
to operate. So there are going to be some pain points in the industry, unfortunately. But let's hope uh, we don't have too many issues like what happened with the two-wheeler industry. That is a nightmare right now for me, because having spent 10 years in trying to build the industry and try to convince everyone that this needs to be done, the biggest risk I tell people is not if we get 10 gigawatt hour or 20 gigawatt hour project. If we have some accidents which happen because of short-sightedness of any developer, it could affect
Even a
entire
smallest
industry.
one.
Yeah, you just imagine what happened with the two-wheeler fires, right? Which had a 2, 3, 4 kilowatt hour batteries.
Yes. Yes.
How much noise, how much scare it, panic it created in the entire auto industry.
Yes.
And here we are talking about individual projects of hundreds of megawatt hour, or individual containers of 4-5 megawatt hour instead of 4 kilowatt hour. So 1,000 times bigger systems being deployed by people without any credentials. So when we are talking now as a Net Zero Energy Transition Association to many of the government agencies, we are trying to actually request all the government agencies, both at central as well as state level, to make sure that they are stepping up the enforcement capabilities on the ground level, so that we are not just leaving it to a chance. Because if you leave it to a chance, then it is just a question of when, not if. And we
Sure.
need to be
We need
careful
to be
about
careful.
that. So again, to all the industry participants who are listening to this, again, I'm very bullish about the sector. The opportunities are tremendous, but we need to respect energy storage as a technology. It is a huge amount of energy cramped in a very small area, and we need to make sure that we are on top of the safety as a safety first approach. It cannot be just one of the 10 things which just tick mark you are doing. You need to learn from latest changes which are happening on the safety regulations around the world and adopt it. And in fact, in case of India, there may be certain differences in terms of the temperature, in terms of humidity, in terms of the
Yes.
dust level, in terms of some of the flooding which happens during monsoons. You cannot take those as a afterthought, right? People say, oh, who would have thought that it would flood? No, everyone would know, right? We have
It's
all
always a
the
chance.
memes going around with people now buying boats in
Yeah.
cities, Mumbai, Pune,
True.
Bangalore, Chennai, Delhi, be it everything gets flooded, right? So when you're looking at where you are locating, you need to start thinking about all these factors, and you cannot just say, oh, I didn't anticipate these issues.
So I also wanted to put down that a number because you talked about safety. I wanted to come to protocols or safety standards which exist. But first of all, let for our calculations, you said the 20-foot container, for example, have a 4 megawatt hour of
Yeah.
electricity, right? Or storage, I would say.
Yes.
So when we're talking about a 1 megawatt of plant, so basically 25 into 20 foot or 500 square foot of a place would be required for a 1 gigawatt.
No,
Or
not
gigawatt.
500. So 20 foot is a 20 foot by maybe like 6 foot or 8 foot, right?
Okay, yeah. So
So just
120 square feet
150,
basically.
yeah,
And
150
then we are
square feet.
talking
Yeah.
about 1 gigawatt hour of
Yeah.
this could be like
So you have multiple, and
2500.
you'll need to keep some space between the containers.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
cannot just stack containers next to each other.
true.
But
So we are talking about. So I just wanted to do this because so an area, possibly like a house or a bigger house sort of
yeah,
thing, having a energy storage of 1 gigawatt of hour.
yes,
So
and there
hence
are
the
in fact,
safety aspect
yeah,
becomes extremely important.
extremely important. And in fact, there are other ways where you can even go better, right? You can, instead of having just containers parked next to each other, you can have a building and you can have a racks going up.
Multi-story
So
buildings.
multi-story kind
Exactly.
of thing. So you can then actually even compact on the footprint even further. So
So, but
all
then
those
we can,
options
we
are
are
there.
also saying a smaller space can also have not just 1 gigawatt of hour, but possibly in 5 hours, that we
Yes,
could see a 10 gigawatt of hour
yes,
in that space because
yeah,
it has gone up
yes, gone up.
vertical but
Yes,
not horizontal
yes,
basically. Wow. So let's come to that safety
yeah,
aspect. When we talk about that, if somebody has to do a energy storage project,
yes,
are there standards that exist which you have to follow,
yes.
or that is the problem because even if they want to follow some standard that don't even exist. So
No, so
what is
that
the
is not a
criteria?
problem. So there are globally, there are many agencies which have been operating on this for last almost 20 plus years. Notably, one of our partners and members is Underwriters Laboratories. They have been one of the leaders on overall electrical safety around the globe. And again, when I'm talking about safety and risk, everyone should understand, right? Everything what we do, right from just electrical, like most of the fires happen because of electrical shorts and
So,
other thing where wiring and other thing can happen, right? So
yeah.
there are standards, and if you follow, then electricity usage is very safe.
Yeah.
Same thing happens with automotive right now. Even in terms of automotive, although sometimes you get more noise about fires on electric vehicles, but internal combustion engine based vehicles have higher failure rates than electric vehicles. So there are leakage in the gas or petrol pipeline, some spark,
Yeah.
because you are
The
basically
more
have a
parts,
higher
the more
higher
parts,
energy
number of parts.
density in petrol or diesel as compared to even what you're talking about in lithium ion battery, and you are sitting on that fuel tank, and you are actually igniting that. Every four stroke engine is having multiple sparks every
Sparks.
time, and you are doing so. You are basically sitting on a very high density fuel tank. You are igniting it, and you are basically getting your all energy from that. But since the sector has evolved, you have come up with automotive very stringent standards where you feel comfortably safe on that. So with energy storage, with lithium ion battery also situation is same. There are excellent safe energy storage solutions which are there right now. In fact, I was reading about some recent accident in China where a Tesla fell almost around 80 feet off the cliff, and still the passenger got out safe without any accident. There have been examples where there was some metal part lying on the road which ended up penetrating the battery pack, and still the battery did not catch fire immediately. It gave a warning, the passenger could get out of the car, and then car got fire. So
Great.
all these safety standards do exist even for stationary energy storage. There are safety standards like UL 9540. There is a safety standard by National Fire Safety Association in US. Europe has with IC. There are safety standard. We just need to make sure that we are following it wholeheartedly. And this is not about just doing a tick mark when you're buying something. There will be safety precautions which you need to take while using. You need to make sure that your earthing is done properly, your grounding is done properly. You need to have some visual observations. You need to have some maybe AI driven preventive maintenance, because in one container you are going to have hundreds of thousands of cells which are packed in a container, right? So you need to be making sure that all those cells are operating in a safe way. If there is a air conditioning happening, or if there is a liquid cooling happening, there is no problem with that, there is no leakage with that. So uh, a well-designed system is a perfectly safe. I've walked into many of those containers, and that way it is there. But if you just focus on cost reduction and don't pay attention to this, or just do it for doing a tick mark against safety, then you are taking a huge risk. And my request to every investor who is funding these projects, every bank who is funding these projects, is to do not leave it just to paperwork, but make sure that you are involving right experts to make sure that these projects are done in a safe way. This is most important factor right now for the industry.
And people have been talking about energy storage, and there are talks now, conversation starting using EV batteries or repurposing them
Yes.
and use for energy storage.
Yes.
Do you think this will be good? And secondly, what all application do you see these usages that happen?
Yeah. So as it goes with most of the consulting engagements, right? The answer is it depends. So yes, there are actually good automotive batteries where there is sufficient life left at end of the vehicle's usage.
Yes.
But it depends very much on which batteries are being used, because in my previous role, we had actually a test lab where we have actually tested many of the automotive batteries going into two-wheelers, three-wheelers in India.
Mhm.
And these batteries hardly had even 500 700 cycle life in its first life. So those batteries, if someone is trying to repackage and sell it to customers, they are fooling customers.
Yes.
Because one thing what you need to realize is that it is not just about what you are getting out of it. So again, wherever you can do second life, that is a good practice in terms of environmental sustainability. But ultimately what you need to figure out is with lithium ion batteries, what is called as a degradation curve. So the y-axis is a capacity of the battery, and
Okay.
x-axis is the number of cycles it is there. And typically what happens is, beyond sort of a 70% of the rated, or 70% of the degradation when it happens, there is a knee of degradation, where after that the degradation can happen faster. So what right now is happening is, there are lot of academic experts or bookish expert who are just thinking that, oh, there is 70% capacity left, so that is great, I'm going to now just relabel it as a 70%, and I'm going to sell it to people because there is 70% left. But the problem is, if it has lasted say 1,000 cycles for going from 100% to 70% capacity, your further degradation may happen within another 100 cycles.
Okay.
You will not going to have a linear
Another
graph
seven,
of
yeah.
another 1,000 cycles for that. So, and again, what is happening right now is that, if you think about a EV battery pack which is being taken say 5 years back, which is now coming for repurposing. 5 years back, the EV battery pack was costing maybe $350 or $400 per kilowatt
Yeah.
hour. Right
Today.
now you have a brand new pack available for $50, $60.
Yeah.
So you can get a brand new pack at $60, which can give you 3,000 cycles, 5,000 cycles, 7,000 cycles life. Or you can think that, okay, you're going to reuse this earlier battery pack and you're going to use it for a few hundred cycles, but still you have to do all the costs related to reassembling everything. So in that case, it may not work. But if the battery pack is in a good shape, where you don't have to open the battery pack, you don't have to reassemble it, and you can directly use it for maybe as a backup application, it could be a good fit. So what we recommend to many of the people we are working with is, don't look at second life batteries as a primary source of energy storage, which is going to replace a solar plus storage where it is being used daily basis.
Okay.
You can think about it as a replacement for a lead acid inverter, where you are expecting maybe a 10 or 50 outages in a year. So even if you are getting maybe few hundred cycles, you can still have 3 years, 5-year life. And that's a very good usage of a second life battery. But if you are thinking that just because you are getting that 70% life is left, you are going to do it and you are going to combine it with solar and going to use it every day, within 1 year you may have to go for replacement, and then the entire cost and everything may not be a good investment, and that will create a bad name for these batteries and customers will be unhappy. So we need to make sure that there is a second life, but it is meant for specific applications. And in case if there is some other reason where the batteries are getting retired earlier, probably yes, you can use it for other good purpose as well. But you need to look at it like complete value chain, and it is not a generic answer for all, right? Within electric vehicle batteries, there are every company who is making lithium ion cells has used to have three categories of batteries. Nowadays, in fact, with the price wars, there are almost 7 or 8 levels of batteries which are being sold in the market.
Wow.
So which quality battery is going into the electric vehicle first will determine if there is a second life at end of it or not. So it's not a generic answer. I don't know if I'm confusing you the
No, it's not.
listeners, but yeah, I would say that
These are the facts that you are telling actually, that this
yes.
actually exists in the market.
Yes. But we are working with many of the actually large OEMs for looking at second life. And my recommendation is that as long as you are transparent, you are setting the expectations right, and you are choosing the right application, there is definitely a good value. And also the seller of those batteries need to be really cautious, because we saw it few years back when we first time tried second life batteries. People say, no, I have paid $500, so I should get at least $300
More
for
value.
this.
Yeah.
But no, the new battery pack is available at $200 that time. Why would someone pay $300 for a second life battery pack? So that way, as long as the expectations are reasonable, we can definitely see some select applications for second life battery.
Yeah, possibly this market still has to grow.
Yes.
It will take time, but
Yes. But in
we have
India,
seen pre-owned cars is something that we...
no. So that way it is there. And in India, again, many times customers do get fooled, right? So we see a lot of times like battery banks and other thing which get sold in the market have these second life cells and other thing.
Yeah.
And there then people don't know actually if they are going to get 100 cycles life out of it or not, or how fast it is going to degrade. So those kind of thing happen. So what it should be like very much important is that there needs to be a proper standard and certification for second life batteries so that consumers are not fooled.
True.
So that is something which is very important.
That'll make the industry rather than
Yes,
break it right in the
exactly.
first time.
Yes.
And what if, let's suppose, if some organization or you and me have to start a energy storage sort of an organization, right? What are the 3-4 things that one has to look at and be right from the beginning only?
So as in you're talking about a commercial company?
Yes.
Or okay. So I would say the first is actually people, because this is a area where technology has evolved quite a lot. But ultimately, you are playing in an area where you need people who can understand the applications, who can understand the technology, and then put the solution together. So people would be first. The second thing I would suggest is pick up a right technology partner, which is not only basis on who is providing you the cheapest technology, but who can actually make the right solution for the entire application. So that is important. And third thing I would say is customer education. So again, it's not that you need to supply an energy storage solution to everyone, right? You need to supply it to the right customers who need it. Similar like analogy I'll give it to is with the EV debate, right? We have actually wasted many years in India about EV for trying to sort of wait for a perfect EV to be available at 5 lakh or below 10 lakh rupees, thinking that customers in India only want below 10 lakh vehicle. The fact was there were actually customers who were driving their vehicles for more than 200 kilometers per day. These were like mainly commercial vehicle operators who could have adopted actually electric vehicles almost 5-6 years back if there were good cars available who were giving them 250-kilometer daily driving range. Unfortunately, those cars were never made available. That's why the market did not take off in a big way that time. So same thing here. I would say that understand the customer, understand the right application, and then find the right technology fit for it and have the right team who can actually deliver the solution. This is an amazing area, and this is just a starting point. You can think about energy storage industry right now at the same stage where solar industry was in 2015. So if you have the appetite, if you have the interest, this is a great area to enter as a market, and done the right way. There are going to be many large companies operating in this area, which are perhaps not yet started. So this is a great area, or even an area for people to diversify. So there are people who are already operating with many of these customer segments who need storage. They can actually add on it as an additional solution to it. It doesn't have to be a completely someone new coming from outside and providing its solution, right? So we are seeing many times companies who are diversifying. They say that we are already working in XYZ sector. We see the need. We have our own plant where we need a energy storage, and we are thinking that we know already 100 other customers similar to us. So why can't we get into this business? So those things will happen.
So thanks, Dr. Rahul, for that amazing masterclass on energy storage and solar. Now, I want to pause here and give you a small break.
Sure.
And we want to have a fun segment with you before we move on to the vision of 2047.
Sure.
So, this segment we call PodPlay.
Okay.
So, we have some questions from you. It's called If Then.
Okay.
And there are some statements. You'll have to finish it
Okay.
in a manner.
Okay.
So, let's start. So, if India delays large scale energy storage by 5 years, then
We will not meet our renewable energy targets.
if discoms continue buying power only on the basis of lowest price, then
We will compromise on reliability, and we will be back in the days with rolling blackouts.
if India focuses only on adding solar capacity without fixing the grid, then
Most of the solar developers will go bankrupt because already we are witnessing 30, 40, 50% curtailment in some of the regions. That will become a norm.
if battery safety fails even once at scale, then
Once we could maybe manage it, but if it becomes a trend, it could set back industry by 3 to 5 years. We have seen it already happening in other countries like Korea. Just a slightly longer answer, but Korea in 2018 actually overtook US as the largest market for grid scale energy storage. And that time they were deploying storage projects which are between like 5 to 50 megawatt hour scale. But they had 35 fires in 1 year, and that set the entire industry shut down for 3 years. We cannot afford those things, and this has happened in multiple things. Even in US we have seen some accidents happen, so we need to learn from others mistake. We cannot make our own mistakes or same mistakes again and expect different results. So my hope is, and I keep on praying, is that we don't have a repeat of it, because no one can say this is not unexpected. This is very well expected if you don't take care of the design and implementation side.
if the next 5 years are executed well, then
Again, our dream has been to make India a global hub for adoption, manufacturing, and R&D of these advanced energy storage and other net zero technologies. And I think we'll be right and on track of that.
and this is interesting. And if India waits for better battery technology before scaling storage, then
We'll be just waiting, right? It's nothing same as you always know that next year you are going to get a better cell phone with a better battery, better camera, more storage.
Yes.
But if you want to stay without a cell phone and go back to landline for a few years, you will always be waiting for that next, because always next there will be something new, amazing coming up. We have seen in the battery space already the kind of improvement which have happened. It is nowhere towards the end of it. So far we have seen mainly innovation happening on the cathode side. There is similar innovation happening on the anode side. Many new technologies are coming up. So there is, again, 10 years from now, we are going to have possibly what we talked about, 40 times improvement in last 20 years, probably something similar, at least another 10, 20 times improvement we are going to see in next 10, 15 years. So we cannot keep on waiting. If you can get value out of that project right now, and if you're not using it, you're not actually saving that money.
Yeah.
You're just paying it to someone else, which is the case which is happening right now in India.
and if clean energy growth outpaces grid upgrades, then
So again, in terms of the grid upgrade, I just want to put a caveat that I hope that you are not only thinking about grid upgrade as building more wires, because that itself would not be helpful. Because if we just do that by to meet renewable energy targets, we just keep on expanding the transmission distribution grid, then we are going to have a overall very inefficient grid, which will not have proper utilization, and that would be very costly for consumers. So the way I see about grid improvement is grid improvement in terms of addition of energy storage, both at maybe supply as well as on a behind the meter side,
okay.
as well as use of advances which are happening with controls, communications, for bringing in demand flexibility, demand response from the customer side. And if we do that as a grid enhancement, then I'm pretty sure we can even get to easily like almost around 70-75% of renewable energy addition, and we can manage that. But
Any
if
year
not,
that you envision this that will be possible?
so by I would say 2035, it should be definitely possible.
Okay.
Because again, what we are seeing right now with even just the emergence of agentic AI, right? So I'm working with certain companies like tridiagonal.ai, where the kind of solutions which are already available right now, which can help in completely revamping the way the grid is operated, is actually amazing. And I'm pretty sure that within next 5 years we'll get a lot more adoption of such technologies, and that is going to open up a lot more flexible operation, lot more reliable operation for the grid. So I think by 2035 we should be able to get to over 50% renewable in terms of the energy addition, not power. Installed capacity, we are already there. I'm talking about energy capacity.
Okay. And if storage is treated only as backup power,
Then it's like an elephant and five blind men. You're only looking at the tail of the elephant and thinking it's a whole story.
wow, that's a great example. Uh, if India prioritizes speed over safety in clean energy deployment, then
Again, without safety, speed. I think there are sayings on the highways, right? Speed kills. So that would be the
it
risk
thrills
which we
but
have.
kills.
It thrills but kills. So that's always the risk. And again, I hope uh, we are in a situation where all these factors are known, and we should be able to do it in a systematic way.
Okay. And one last,
Yeah.
if policy keeps changing every few years, then
In fact, that is great. If policymakers are listening to the changing situation and they change, it should actually change. Policy should not be as a static just because something information which was available to policymakers at a given time. If that is changing, policy should change. At the same time, it should not do a flip flop. As long as it is adapting to the changes and it is tweaking, that is a perfectly right evolution. Because again, policymakers don't have a crystal ball, right? Policymakers are taking decision based on what information they have, what feedback they are getting, and many times the participants may not have the full knowledge, so things may change. So I think it is actually a sign of a healthy democracy and bureaucracy to have policy making where you can take actually feedback and you can improve on the policy. As a policymaker, you should not have a feeling that I know everything, and once I have given a एक बार मैंने ठान ली तो ठान ली. That should not be the case. If there is something which is changes from the assumptions which were used for making the policies, you should very well learn and adopt. Yeah.
okay, Rahul. So that was really quick. We really appreciate the great answer that you have given and very interesting ones also. Now that we have already talked about we have also taken the masterclass from you on energy storage and solar. We would want to understand what is Dr. Rahul's vision for 2047 if you specifically talk about energy sector.
So the way I see it is, as a country, if you talk about specifically India, the Prime Minister has already put the net zero target for 2070.
Yes.
But I would say that if we want to, as a country, head towards net zero by 2070, then at least the electricity sector has to become net zero by 2047, because electricity is actually one of the easiest sector to decarbonize, and that we should be able to get by that time. And we should also be able to start making a good inroads for decarbonization of hard to abate sectors like cement, steel, fertilizers, and these areas, because many of these investments, what will happen even in like 40s, these will have life of 30-50 years beyond that, right? So if we are looking at sort of moving towards net zero, we need to have lot more clarity on the policy direction. We need to stop reinventing the wheel in terms of looking at every new technology as a completely new animal and thinking policy or financing or business models as a complete from start. We should be able to learn from cross industry as well as cross country learnings on adopting these technologies. And if we do that, I'm pretty sure we will be well on track by 2047. I think Prime Minister has already set up 2047 as a target for Vikasit Bharat, but we can also be one of the leaders in terms of the net zero transition, especially with now what is happening in some of the Western countries where, unfortunately, with the flip flops on the government policies, some of the traditional leaders may not be the leaders in this. So I think India has a opportunity to become a real thought leader, not just thought leader, but implementation leader in this area.
Perfect. So that was something that you envision for India 47 in the energy sector. But let me rephrase this and understand that if you're moving in an Indian city and you're walking around, basically possibly going to a market or office or
Yeah.
howsoever, what has transformed in India that day? What do you see what's happening around? So tell us more about that.
So as a city, there are a number of different things right here. If you permit me, I would like to go beyond just the energy side of it.
Yes, please.
So first and foremost, I think we need to have a better planning for the cities, because I don't see in terms of cleaning the energy sector as just a way that, okay, there is a demand in certain way and you are just meeting that demand in a clean way. You can actually go back to sort of the first principle and start looking at how we are actually building these cities, because there are so many cities in India which are amongst like the top 10 in the world in terms of the fastest growth. And most of the times we end up like growing this just as a, just divide the plots and let the individual developers figure out how to develop, and then figure out the electricity, water, the waste disposal all as afterthought. It should not be the case. You need
Yes.
to start having that planning. You need to make sure that the sufficient water capacity, sufficient electricity, sufficient waste disposal, and all those things are planned ahead of time. And there also we need to start thinking about every step at a first level. For example, there is no point in just collecting all the garbage, hauling it 100 kilometers away and creating a big mountain of that waste, right? You have now better technologies where there are now with a lot of bioenzymes and other things, you can actually do lot of organic waste, convert it into manure right at location as fast as in 3 days. I'm just coming from a Thai global summit where I saw some of these innovations. And so those type of solutions need to be integrated right at the level. We need to be not just thinking about water in terms of creating new dams or rerouting rivers, or connecting rivers, but we need to be thinking about how to do water recharge. All those things need to be become a standard practice. Use of solar thermal for water heater. Again, there are many cities already like Bangalore and others which has mandated it. This should become a standard practice wherever it is economically feasible. We need to figure out
So do you think in 2047 when you're walking around you will be able to see all these things happening?
that's the
So
effort we are
would
putting in.
would that have really transformed? So what's your India 2047 should look like, considering all these problems have solved, and you are seeing a new India, like 100 years of independence that has happened, and
Yeah.
you're seeing this. Tell us that visual. What you are.
No, so I'm right now again. I think there is, I think, this whole theory about manifestation, right? That if you manifest something and you work hard towards it, then it will happen. So I'm really hopeful with that, because I'm seeing there are so many bright, like-minded people trying to actually working on these same goals. The only thing which I feel missing right now is that most of the work is happening in silos. There is a lot of duplication of work happening, and ultimately it is creating more noise, which is delaying things. So through what we are trying to do through Netra as a platform is to try to create a platform where we can actually work on a collaborative way rather than competitive way, and try to achieve the goals faster.
Yes.
And technically I feel that in most of the things we don't need to now wait for any more new technology breakthroughs, although those will keep on happening, with especially with now role of AI in new material discovery. In fact, one of the winners of this Thai global competition was someone who has now mastered the art of coming up with new photocatalysts which can clean different water sources by just adding few grams of material,
Wow.
just using sunlight. So that was a winner of this Thai global competition from Canada. So those types of solutions are coming up, which in fact just 5 years back no one would have imagined that a company would be able to figure out 25 different photocatalysts which can clean up water using sunlight without any energies, without any other thing, and in a span of less than 2 years. These are a bunch of PhD students in Canada using quantum computing for discovering that. So when you start thinking about what is happening, because there's a lot of time debate about, oh, data centers are energy guzzlers, data centers are going to do this, it is going to become a problem. Whereas I see what data centers will enable will actually solve many more problems than the problems what it is creating.
Yes.
Because in terms of the energy consumption, what they need is relatively straightforward problem which can solve. But all that compute and data capability beyond just making viral reels and other thing, which again for fun people can very well do, I see tremendous opportunities for role of AI in lot of planning, in terms of energy, in terms of manufacturing. Traditionally, it has taken most of these breakthrough technologies 50-60 years for reaching commercial maturity.
Yes.
Like lithium ion batteries were not invented in last 10 years. Lithium-ion batteries, some of the initial research papers got published in as early as 1976. It
Wow.
took 17 years for lithium-ion batteries to
That's
get commercialized when Sony first commercialized it for camcorders and Walkman. That happened in 1993. It took another almost 15 years till almost 2008 before this battery started getting used for heavy duty power tools and for electric vehicles. And then it took another 15 years before the gigafactory scaled up and prices got to the stage where now everyone is talking about it. So this traditional life cycle of almost 45 to 60 year of technology development, now if you start using AI in a intelligent way, we can actually cut down a lot of risk in the technology scale up and manufacturing scale up and make it possible within 10-15 years. And I'm very optimistic that we have all the pieces of the puzzle there. Now we just need to like zoom out, look at the whole picture and put those pieces together. And that's what we are attempting through NETRA.
wow. So that's interesting. And how do you think we talked about a lot of renewables actually
Yeah.
in our discussions earlier? How do you think solar, wind, all these renewables will be playing their part in 2047? What would we be able to achieve 100% renewables by that time?
We
Or that's not even the
could be, so
achievement
at least
that's
in terms of what
required.
I'm thinking, that it is, I think we need to get away from that 100% fixation, right? For example, right now I'm seeing a lot of discussion about some technologies where because you want to get to 100% renewable, people are looking at building large batteries for 100 hours of energy discharge capability, because if there is 1 week there is a monsoon and there is a sun is not shining, then we need to build these large batteries which will store that and will supply that. No, I think that is foolishness. We have actually technology which could be even diesel, right? Diesel is a very cost effective way of providing backup power, especially if you want it only once in a year or a few times in a year. Just using it for 50 hours,
In
60
a
hours in a year, we should not be suddenly feeling that no, we cannot at all completely use it. So I'm from that point of view not completely purist for renewable energy. I think the last 90% to 100% is going to be the toughest.
yeah.
And that part I'm pretty sure that the economics and business will figure it out. If we get even to 90%, that is
That's
beyond at least my dream and my goal, what I have in that, because I know that ultimately it's going to be a mix of technology. It is not going to be about, and there is no technology which has no consequences, right? Even if you take solar, even if you take wind, there are issues related to the end of the life, recycling and other things which still are figuring out. There will be some costs related to the mining, related to others, so there are some costs. So I don't believe in just basically just because you are generating electrons without using any fuel, that is entire thing is just green. I think we need to be looking at the life cycle emission at a system level, and if there is a role for different technologies to coexist, I don't think there is any harm in that, especially if you can actually optimize it and use it only for the time which is required.
So that was an interesting example of the diesel thing that you have given, because if you're just using it for 50 hours in a year, possibly that transformation may not be required.
Yeah, see,
Possibly.
because what happens is that you have to ultimately, I firmly believe that you can pretend about anything except for money.
Okay.
Again, some people do pretend about money as well, but let's keep that aside. But practically, whenever you are building any business, ultimately the economics has to make sense. Otherwise,
True.
no policymaker, no government incentive is going to be able to. They can distort the market for few years, but they cannot change the underlying. So that's my firm belief that ultimately it's a market-driven economy, and economics has to make sense. Just take an example of outage, right? If there are say 100 outages in a year, but those are 2 hour outage, you can address that with a 2 hour battery,
Yes.
and that is very cost effective already, and it should be a no question that you should not be having to use a diesel generator for that. But if there is some storm which is coming up and there is a transmission line goes down or something, and there is a 2 day continuous outage, a 2 hour battery is not going to be able to supply 48 hours of power, right?
Yes, of course.
So what's the harm in having a diesel generator with only sufficient diesel, which is serving a hospital which is going to be required during some storm or something, and it is addressing that? There is no point in putting a 50-hour battery and using it one cycle in a year. It is not a greatest
Is it,
environmental solution. So at
and
least
the cost
I think
also
about
is
it.
something.
Yeah, cost is there. The overall environmental cost of making the battery, keeping it idle, maintaining it, all of that is unnecessary resource optimization. So when I'm thinking about a lot of these issues, I'm thinking it from a system point of view, and not in terms of favoring. Although many times people look at me and immediately start thinking that I'm going to be just pushing the storage for sake of storage. But if you see all my track record in the policy work or most of the advocacy work which we have done, we have always taken a stand of allowing technology agnostic policies, and areas where technologies are superior, we should make sure that policies are not becoming barrier for those technologies. So that has been our primary focus, but not just pushing technologies for sake of it. That doesn't work.
And
For
where does
us.
energy storage will be in 2047? Because you talked about energy storage.
So energy storage again, probably some of these technologies which are right now will still exist, but probably in a completely different format. As I said, a lot of innovation which has happened with batteries in last perhaps 10-15 years has focused on innovation on the cathode side of it, whereas now we are seeing a lot of improvements on the anode side, going from graphite to addition of graphene, addition of silicon on the anode side. We are looking at innovation on the electrolyte. We're moving towards maybe possibly solid state electrolyte or semi-solid electrolyte, which can allow even liquid metal electrodes to be there, which can have almost double the energy density of current batteries. So there are a lot of those type of innovations are there. There are better now modeling happening at the material level, where people are talking about three-dimensional architecture of the electrodes while making, which can allow faster charge discharge. So right now people think about 2 minute 3 minute charging, it will kill the battery life and other thing, but people are working on designing those type of batteries where it can be designed for that. Now ultimately, do you really need the 3 minute charging for a something like electric vehicle is a separate question. I believe that if a vehicle is parked on the road for 90% of its life, there is no need for it to be charged in 3 minutes.
3 minutes, yeah.
That's something which is required for petrol, because petrol or diesel, because you cannot recharge that at home, so you
True.
have to go to a place and you cannot keep on waiting for that. But if you have sufficient charging available wherever it is there, I think most of the vehicles will be parked at least 8 hours, even commercial vehicles. But
Yeah.
most of the other vehicles actually will be parked for anywhere from 20 to 22 hours in a day. So as long as you have even a slow speed charging available, charging is not an issue. I think we need to start thinking on those lines to see how to do it.
True. So on that,
Yeah.
so because we've created that vision, right? And you talked about a lot of things that are there. Let's understand, how do we actually reach out this vision? You talked about 2047 electricity needs to
Yes.
get a net zero target, should have achieved 2070 is what the India is looking at. But let's plan out if we have to do that for 2030, let's 2035 and 2047 or so what all steps do we need to take? Are there any interventions required? Do you see any policy interventions? Do you see some other things that are required, non-negotiable, needs to be done to achieve that vision?
So on the policy side, I think the biggest thing what we need is get away from just announcing some big numbers for 10 years down the line and start focusing on implementation. That is perhaps the key thing. And the other aspect is we need to make sure that we are working across different ministries and different agencies in a cohesive way with the big picture. So luckily, the Prime Minister's office and Niti Aayog is already thinking on those lines. So they have created committees, where one of the committees I'm part of is for energy sector monitoring, where they're looking at policies across 6 ministries and almost 35 public sector units across Ministry of Power, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, Ministry of Coal, Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, Ministry of Science and Technology, and making sure that all the different programs and initiatives which are being proposed by each ministry is ultimately going towards the vision which is set up by Honorable Prime Minister, and it is not conflicting, because coal is looking at doubling
No.
coal production, wind is
Yes,
looking
true.
at doubling wind, solar is looking at tripling solar, and ultimately we need to have same system and deliver on it. So those type of a coordination is very well required. To some extent, I think Niti Aayog is that agency, but again, we have seen some changes with the changes in how Niti Aayog has operated between Amitabh Kant and the subsequent CEOs. So, but I think we are more or less in that place. So if we can actually coordinate this across, and the other area which I'm very much hopeful is actually international collaboration. I think what we saw with G20 during India, with kind of a vibrant collaboration happening around multiple countries and other thing, if we can actually really leverage that, I think especially in India we are in a beautiful situation, because especially after COVID, almost every major economy is looking for China plus one strategy, and India is perhaps one of the only maybe two or three options which they have. So if we get our act together, I think there is a tremendous international collaboration opportunity which exists. And ultimately, the way I think about it is, climate change is a global problem and it needs solutions which can be scaled at a global scale.
Yeah.
There is no point in just having a company or startup and hyping it up and getting it listed and then announcing that okay, we have a unicorn. That does not serve if you really don't actually produce the products at a scale which is going to have an impact at a global scale. But I think in India we have an opportunity to play a key role in that, be it in terms of having the global capability centers, be it in terms of actually manufacturing those solutions or being part of the supply chain, like what auto industry has shown, where many times when we think about auto industry, we think about just Tata Motor, Mahindra, Toyota, Ashok Leyland, the big names. But actually, the auto industry's success is thanks to more than 3,000 or 5,000 ancillary and component suppliers, which are actually supplying not just to these five, 6 companies in India, but actually to around the globe. And that type of a capability we need to develop across the supply chain. And one area which we need to focus on is, it is not something which every entrepreneur need to figure out on its own. So again, through Net Zero Energy Transition Association, we are trying to create an ecosystem so that when an investor is funding a company, maybe there is investment required also in the supply chain, there is investment required in another companies who could be off taker for that, and this fund may not be able to invest in all of those, but there may be other likely investors who could be investing in those. And ultimately, if we can syndicate this investment across the ecosystem, it will de-risk every investment. Right now, one of the biggest frustration I have is, I see at many of these discussion, people say, oh, clean tech is very hard, it has a 4 times higher failure. But the way I see it, it is not because clean tech is inherently hard. There is enough knowledge, enough thing to do. It's again rocket science. People say that, oh, it's rocket science, but there are rockets which people have quite high reliability, right?
Yes.
So if you can again focus on getting these right things across the ecosystem, you can actually manage the risk in a very well way. I have got trained, fortunately, with Dr. Granger Morgan at Carnegie Mellon University, who is famous for decision making under uncertainty. So that's what I feel, that rather than just thinking that everyone has to handle all the uncertainty themselves, if we can remove some of these silos and we can connect the dots, then we can actually manage the risk in a much better way. And if we do that, most of the goals what we have, we can actually surpass those.
Very nice. And because you talked about the various stakeholder that exist, if somebody has to lead this blueprint that we are talking about, whether that needs to be government, that industry, or utilities, and what's the role of NETRA towards this blueprint that we are doing?
So the way I see it is not only it is not a race where all these entities are competing against each other, right? This is a race which is, I think about it as a relay race, where for us to succeed, all of them need to play their part in terms of winning the race. So yes, government need to be focused on making the right policy, right business environment, remove the barriers, remove the inefficiencies in the way current system is working. And I'm very happy in last 10 years, a lot of those things have happened, although a lot more can be done in a systematic way. At the same time, industry also need to have a confidence in our own ability. Every time we cannot keep on waiting for government to address all the risk or government to do everything and keep on delaying decision. So industry definitely need to step up, and investors need to again bet the right thing, take the risk, which is in a knowing way, not just in a spray and pray kind of a mode, but put the risk where they can get good reward. And ultimately, even consumers will play a role, right? So one of the areas which, as a Net Zero Energy Transition Association, we are doing is we are working across three sectors. So we are working on grid decarbonization. We are looking at sustainable mobility, not just road, but also looking at air mobility as well as marine. And we are looking at commercial industrial sector decarbonization.
Okay.
And within that, we have created 9 councils where we are looking at, for example, I'm personally leading area which is related to global policy coordination, industry academia collaboration, where right now there are more than 50 global institutes which have $100+ million investment to set up center of excellence for some aspect related to sustainability. The sad part is most of these institutes are not working with maybe more than 5 other institutes in this area. And there are more than 500 companies who are actually complete their businesses focus around net zero related products, but many of those actually don't even know this 50 or maybe even more than 2 or 3 of these institutes. So a lot of these things is happening in silos. So we are trying to connect those, but ultimately when these products get to it and they get some investment, manufacturing starts, it will only scale if there are adopters. And many times what happens is we set these amazing goals for 10 years or 20 years down the line of 10% cost at 10 times the performance. But what we forget is there is actually a value even at that early stage, like what happened with lithium ion batteries. Even at 1993 prices, it was economical to use lithium ion batteries for camcorders and Walkmans. Even at the price point where lithium ion batteries were back in 2005, it was hugely profitable to use those for Black and Decker power tools, which was a complete game changer for Black and Decker. So you need to identify those early value propositions where these technologies can get adopted. You can create sufficient market so that the manufacturing can scale up. If you just keep on waiting for a huge market volume, huge price reduction, we will never reach there. For every technology which has made this transition, there are probably 100 technologies which are still at stagnant at the same stage where they were 50 years back. So that's a part where we are focusing through NETRA, is to try to look at technology innovation, the manufacturability. We are combining the technology readiness level framework with manufacturing readiness framework, as well as market or policy readiness level framework. And by combining these three, we think we can manage the risk in a much better way and shorten the timeline to 10 years for scaling up some of the technologies which are already showing promising things. So that's the focus of NETRA, and we're trying to build the ecosystem for doing this.
True, and we wish all the best to NETRA and you also for the transition that you're looking forward and the great work that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
So thanks, Rahul. That was amazing conversation we had with you. Now we can move to our last segment. We call it what the FAQ, the rapid fire round. We have good questions and we expect great answers from you. So let's start. So 10 years back at one of the interview, one lady asked you this question. If you would describe yourself as a renewable source, what would you be? And you gave a very interesting answer. Do you remember that?
I think I said storage. I think
exactly. So looking at you, so does that answer change? What would you say today?
No, if you see me from that picture and now, I think I've done an amazing job of storing the energy. Now what I'm hoping is that looking at the net zero in the next 10 years, I will start looking at discharging that energy and moving towards a zero figure. So let's see if we achieve that.
Wow, but moving towards zero figure. That's a great statement that we should come back to you after 10 years. And so choose one from the following. I have two things. You have to choose. So cheap power or reliable power?
Reliable power.
Scale fast or scale safely?
Scale safely.
Centralized grid or distributed energy?
Distributed energy, but connected to the grid, not in isolation.
Not in isolation. Domestic manufacturing or global integration?
Global integration with domestic manufacturing playing a role.
Okay, both of it. Yeah. Policy stability or policy flexibility?
Policy flexibility.
So now these questions you'll have to answer one word by one word only. So one word to describe India's clean energy journey today.
Promising.
One word to describe energy storage in India right now.
Infancy.
Come here.
Infancy.
Infancy. What would that mean?
Just the early start.
Just early. Okay.
Yeah.
Infancy.
Infancy.
That is okay. One word policymaker misuse most in clean energy.
Yes. When is it going to get cheap?
So, one word founders misunderstand about bankability.
That bankability is only about spreadsheets.
One word that will define India's energy future.
Collaboration.
I was expecting you would say NETRA. So, this is just called reality check. So, most overrated clean energy buzzword right now.
Long duration energy storage.
Most underrated part of India's power system.
System operations.
One clean tech idea that sounds great but rarely works.
Nuclear fission.
One thing India should stop doing in clean energy.
Focusing on L1.
And one thing India should double down on immediately.
Implementation.
And this is about future. So one thing about India's energy future you're optimistic about.
Having reliable clean power for all.
One thing that still worries you the most.
Safety.
One advice to a 25-year-old entering clean energy today.
Focus on interdisciplinary skills.
One mistake India cannot afford in next 5 years.
Wait for next better technology or cheaper technology.
And the last one word for India's energy system in 2047.
Net zero.
So great answers, Dr. Rahul. And because of those great answers, we have a gift hamper for you on our show, What's the Vision? I think you really deserve it.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, Dr. Rahul, for being on the show. It was a great conversation with you.
It's a pleasure and look forward to continuing the conversation and seeing you, maybe hosting you on another podcast.
Wow, that'd be wonderful someday.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of What's the Vision. It was a great conversation. One help from your side, please do follow our channel, What's the Vision. It will help us bring great visionaries like him in the future too. Till we meet again, thank you so much.